yes, that is a hard concept because in society we were taught that we have to, in our culture, we are taught that you have to be proactive, you have to take control, you have
Yeah,
to um, shape your life, your destiny through doing things. But
yeah.
actually, and sometimes that is appropriate, but I think it's way less appropriate than what we teach in society. Hi there, it's the podcast Who Am I with me, Stephen, and with William.
Hello.
Um, Today we are going to be talking about personal responsibility, and we'll see where we go with that. Because, as you know, we enjoy the sort of organic nature of our discussions and how they evolve. We don't really have too much of a structure with what we do, and I think that really works for us. And then I've had some good feedback from people saying that they kind of like that. And so, yeah. I guess defining things, William, how would you define personal responsibility as a sort of
Oh,
like broad topic?
that's tough.
It is.
Um, okay, one thing that might help is looking at the word itself,
Yeah.
response, and then it might mean responsibility, so the ability to respond, or the ability to choose your response. That has something to do with being responsible, so that well, assuming that I have any measure of free will at all, um, when something in my surroundings happens, how do I respond to it? So I'm
Perfect.
responsible
Yeah.
for my response. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a very good. Yeah. I think that's better than like I've done. Way of saying it. Yeah. Responsible for our response. Because every day we come across things, don't we, that will cause us to respond, whether it's passively, subconsciously, actively.
Mhm.
We have all these different um ways to choose or not choose, because again it might be conditioned. Like we don't really know. I guess that's one thing that I personally think as human beings we are very instinctual with our responsibility, with how we respond to things. It just because in that moment to have a conscious how should I respond is kind of impossible in a way because in that moment it has to happen usually quickly. So you almost have to like again program or condition yourself to how you're going to respond, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I said that disclaimer at first, that assuming that we have any free will, because
Yes.
we,
Yeah.
I guess we need to explain a bit more
Yeah. Go back to some roots here.
our views
Yeah.
of decision making.
Yeah. Because you have the nature nurture, obviously we've talked about before. Most people enjoy talking about that kind of topic where is our environment affecting our choices of responses to things? Is it our genetic code? Again, do we have free will ultimately? Like
Yeah.
to how we respond to things?
So let's pick some example before it gets too
Yeah, examples
abstract.
are good. Yep.
Let's say I have a child and I am responsible as a very small a toddler, right? So I'm responsible for them, for their survival, for example, for their development, for their education, and how much of that is instinctive or conditioned, like you said, and how much am I choosing to do? So we all have a strong instinct for our own survival and for the survival of our, well, of young people in general, but of our children, uh, mostly.
Yep.
You know, when the Titanic sinks, who gets to survive? At first, the
Yeah.
ones who have the longest life ahead of them, the ones who might still create new life. Um, so those are some things that I believe are genetically preconditioned. Then there's also cultural conditioning. What do we pick up from our parents and just people around us in general? And then there's psychological conditioning. So for us individually, what do we believe and where do these beliefs come from? And all of these are factors in that complex decision-making
Yeah.
process.
Like I guess yeah, that's a clear sign of how complex it is. Like again, how responsible are we for our again reactions? when it's so complex, like when there's so many factors. Like if you're talking about the willpower of someone to again react to certain situations, again it will depend on the specific example, but overall we are yeah, how responsible are we? Because again, it's not, I'm not talking about making excuses, but I'm talking about, where you're raised has a massive impact. If I was raised in a socially deprived, drug dealing, violent area, yes, what's my responsibility to overcome the pressures that are constantly put on me? Because it's harder for someone to break out of that situation than it is for someone that wasn't raised in that situation.
For example, did you go to university?
Yeah, like I
Right.
was I was literally like I was streamlined to university. I was privileged, I was lucky, I was or
And
fortunate, however you want to phrase the words.
but my point is actually another one.
Oh, sorry,
What
go on.
what use was it? How much use was it for the rest of your life?
Socially, amazing. Again, it helps me interact with people, like diverse groups of people, um, built confidence, um, all
But the
sorts of
content,
things. But the content, for me personally, um, didn't go to plan, but it would have. That's what's interesting. So for me personally, I was doing sports like a degree. For me, I was doing coaching, I was doing care work, I was looking towards working within the local council, doing disability sports development. So I actually was on the right path for that. Again, right path, lol. Um, the um, the path that I was choosing, I guess, and that was also kind of given to me through very, again, fortunate circumstances. But again, the health stuff kicked in, which made me change that path.
mhm.
So I was actually one of the fortunate ones that would have actually used their degree for the specific thing it was meant for. But most people really don't. Like it's literally like you get a degree and you go into a job that is nothing to do with that degree. Um, so the responsibility to try and find it, and most people try to find it. They take that choices. They use their um I guess well free will if you want to call it that, or what they want to do, and they try
Yeah,
to find somewhere, but they just can't. Like most people that I know tried desperately to use their degrees into the field that they were wanted to,
right.
but because we were told we were told you will go out and you'll get a job straight away um in the field that you want, earning this amount of money, and then that is not what happened to most people,
Yeah,
at
it's
least that I
changed a
know.
lot since our parents and their parents' generation, because
Yeah,
a high school degree used to be rare,
yeah,
and so a job guarantee, and now a master's degree isn't that anymore.
yeah,
So we have these. So we've given two examples of behavior that can be highly conditioned, uh, education and having your own children, and then just
yes,
passing on how to raise a child from what you learned from your own parents or other people who have influenced you. Um, but if we are so automatized, do we even have responsibility for our actions?
yeah. That's what I'm always intrigued by that, because so many people get so guilty about their actions. They feel so bad about their
Yeah,
actions when most people that I know, good, loving, amazing people, but they just have this, whether it's again internal. I personally think it's cultural. It's partly genetic, I think, like with mental health, chemical imbalances, but mostly, in my opinion, it's a social thing that we just don't teach and educate each other, society, of how to like um not feel bad for things. Like just like because again, oh no, I um didn't help my friend with their shopping the other day because I was too tired, and then you feel guilty and bad about it. And it's like, well, no, you could again, don't take on that responsibility. Again, um we take a lot of responsibility on ourselves that we shouldn't, in my opinion.
yeah, I do that, and people say it's out of your control,
Yeah.
and that doesn't help me at all in that situation, even if it's true. But that just shows you that my thinking is not rational, because if you're being irrational, then something rational will not help you. You need to discover for yourself what inside of you is irrational. So there's some belief about responsibility, about even causality,
Yeah.
about how the world works and your part in it. That is wrong. But as you know, my path for the last few years has been not to figure out what is the right way to think, but to get rid of all of these beliefs, no
Yeah.
matter how noble they seem.
Yeah.
Just get rid of all of them. And that leaves me looking at the world and myself as a mystery, something that I no longer try to understand or explain, and I just discover. At least that's
Yeah.
the goal. I'm not there yet, but I've made some steps in that direction. And that also automatically helps with the question of responsibility and guilt,
Yeah.
just my role.
Yeah. Like, and I guess that's where we separate um responsibility as an instinctive thing and responsibility of as a choice, where we feel that again how we respond we take control of how we respond to things. Like, so you're taking control of, again, maybe not control's the wrong word, but you're taking responsibility, lol, for um how you deal with life, with who you are as a person. You're taking responsibility of how you respond, and then in the future, because you're taking the responsibility, now it'll make your responses um easier, healthier. I don't know what the right terminology is.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And this is where language gets really
Oh, so messy.
difficult
Yeah.
because what I'm attempting to do is not to improve myself
Yes.
or to improve how I respond to situations. It
Yes.
is,
Okay. Yeah.
you're not wrong in what you said.
Because by saying improve, we take away what we're trying to communicate. We're trying to communicate that like that concept of improve is actually detrimental
Yeah,
to who we are, because you're taking on responsibility things that you don't shouldn't be. So,
yeah,
because you are great the way you are. Like, again, ultimately, that's what we should understand, is that we are a being that is incredible and beautiful and
yes,
amazing.
yes, I
And
agree. So I'm actually removing things that are in the way of that.
yes,
It's like the finished sculpture is already in the rock. I'm just
yes,
removing things that are obstructing our view or our access to it.
that's a great way, yeah, to put it. Yep, that's good. I like that.
So I'm letting go of things more and more
Yes,
that are getting in the way of just this pure interaction between whatever I am and whatever the outside is, which turns out to be one and the same, but still that's what it seems like
yeah,
most days. And then people might say, when they hear this, they might criticize, but doesn't that mean you're just taking no responsibility and you're being a nihilist, or I don't know what other terms there are. You're being a narcissist, or
yeah.
you're not taking control where you're supposed to.
That's yes, that is a hard concept, because we in society we were taught that we have to, in our culture we are taught that you have to be proactive, you have to take control, you have
Yeah,
to um shape your life, your destiny, through doing things. But
yeah,
actually, and sometimes that is appropriate. But I think it's way less appropriate than what we teach in society. Like, I think very rarely I think that you come across a situation in life where actually um, taking control or leading or taking responsibility actually is the most effective path. I think most of the time the most effective path that I've through experimenting is to do nothing, is to
hmm
just be still and to accept and to let go, these terms that we use. Um,
yeah. To be observant,
yeah,
to allow things to happen, to fail.
yeah,
So, what belief is at the root of this response of people who say, "But you have to intervene, otherwise, things go to crap." So that's their belief, right? If
yeah,
we don't take control, then bad things will happen. Then if we don't fix the climate,
yes.
then we will the planet will burn, or an ice age. I don't know. Depends on
Whichever way, which way
your
it
your
goes. Yeah,
perspective. If I don't constantly watch my thoughts then I will become a terrible person and maybe kill someone or hurt myself or whatever you're afraid of. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure
There you
where
go.
these fears come from.
Yeah, whatever you're afraid of, fears. That's what it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, it's fear. I'm a stock record because I say it pretty much every episode, but just fear is such a virus that we have in our cultures. It's just constantly there. Fear, fear, fear. We've got to be used talking about like stuff that makes us afraid. Um, Parents when they teach us how to behave, it's used mostly with fear. It's like, oh, don't do that, or you'll go, or I'll get the police, or I'll put you on the naughty step, or whatever age terminology.
Mhm.
There's always fear, and we're talking about when we're talking about letting go and accepting, is that my like the way to do that is gentleness and love. Like that is a kindness. That is the motivator. Um, yeah, at least that's what I see anyway.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine a world where everyone just does whatever they want because we're used to so many rules and authorities uh, blocking that from ever happening. Um, but sometimes, in a small corner of the world, some people do whatever they want and they thrive.
Yeah,
And if they do become, I don't know, criminals, because you see that too, right? When a lot of people, when they hear anarchy, they first think of protests or riots
yeah,
where people smash shop windows and steal TV screens, stuff like that. And then they believe, well, that is human nature, right? If you allowed everyone to do whatever they wanted, then that is what would happen. There would be no order and no chance to thrive or even survive. And that might be true for some people, and that's why I am careful about my views on anarchy, because it requires spiritual maturity for a society to work well, where everyone does whatever they feel is right. I don't know. It's
yeah.
really tricky.
Again, there still has to be education. Again, anarchy without education is just chaos and violence. But with education of spiritual awareness, like you talk about, and then anarchy um, is a beautiful thing.
And by education, you don't mean that you need to add beliefs to people's consciousness. I think more important it is to remove things.
Yeah, we'll just have the spectrum available.
So does that
Like,
mean that everyone gets born with false beliefs from the beginning? Like I don't believe in this plain sheet, in this tabula rasa, where you are you have no beliefs and no mental properties when you get born. I think at least genetically you're born with certain beliefs already.
yeah, interesting. Never really thought about that. How would you know? That's the question. Like, how would you ever know?
Well,
Um,
when you've met some very small babies, especially when you're a parent, you realize very soon that they already have a personality. They
okay.
come pre-programmed, you might say. Uh,
Yeah.
there's a lot to them already.
Yeah. Okay. No, I see where you're going with that. Yeah. And I guess without any influence on that or too much influence on that, how would they I guess be aware of the differences between things? Again, like taking responsibility of your actions and things like that. Because if you have no responsibility of your actions, then are you just going to do whatever you want in a negative way or a positive way? Well, I guess a constructive or destructive. Again, terminology, language, difficult.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm not sure. We have it's easy for us to accept little children being dependent on us for their survival, so that they need our leadership and support, and that they make mistakes or
yeah,
that they are destructive or disruptive in some negative sense, and therefore we need to keep that in check. But at some certain age, I don't know which age, that no longer becomes acceptable. You should be able to look after yourself. You should be able to keep yourself in check. And
Yeah.
obviously, it's not just you're 18 and now suddenly you're expected to do that.
It is funny, isn't it? Yeah, this ages of like this is when you're everyone is under the same bracket that you're now 18 and therefore you're now able to be responsibility for everything or
Yeah.
responsible for everything,
Some
etc.
people learn at 60 what other people learn at 10.
Yeah,
I mean, just certain aspects, not everything,
yeah,
obviously.
yep. It is. But I guess drawing it back to I guess ourselves
Mhm.
in our own scope of things. Like I from a young age took way too much responsibility on myself. Like I was always just like pretty much like this is the level of I guess probably the right term. It's probably a bit of a loose term, but level of crazy that was in my brain is that um I you talk about taking the world weight of the world on your shoulders. I literally felt responsible for like everything around me, and my influence on the world had to be as good and pure and positive as I could possibly make it. Otherwise, I was letting everyone down. I wasn't like good enough, and I took on the responsibility of so much, like in that regard, and it was so unhealthy. Like it was so again destructive for my mental state, and so having to realign that to a position where I guess I agree with myself, make a contract basically of how much responsibility am I going to take on for other people's choices, for my own choices, and these sorts of things.
Yeah, I've had that feeling too. Um I was often upset when I saw other people behaving in a way that I was not okay with me, and so I felt responsible for their behavior. But I know it sounds crazy, but I thought that if I were a better example or maybe even teacher,
Yep.
then I could have prevented their negative behavior. And that's sure, people have behavior that can bug me, but I need to find something in myself that causes these thoughts and feelings in such situations. Um, I can't think of what exactly it was that helped me realize that I don't need to feel that way. But
Yeah.
but
Well, yeah. Sorry, go on.
one takeaway was it's okay for things to take their course. There, if you think about the environment that you see, maybe in your entire lifetime, it's just a fraction of all the things going on in the world.
Yes.
there,
Oh,
there,
yes.
there is chaos, there is unwanted behavior everywhere, and you cannot stop that. So that's one way to help myself to realize that it's irrational.
Again, and it's not your responsibility. This
Mhm.
is it. Again, it's not our role to um again to proactively um I guess influence people around us. Or like it's our responsibility to just be who we want to be. And that will naturally do something constructive around us in the world. Like it's yeah, like we can only be us. We shouldn't be worrying about how we should or shouldn't respond to other people's behavior. We just learn to again remove that need for control. Like
Yeah, or the fantasy of there being an order.
yeah,
This topic always reminds me of the discussion in Star Wars Episode 2, I think, between Anakin and Padme, where they're sitting on the grass. They're just on a date,
yeah.
on a secret date. Anyway, they're sitting on the grass, and they're both in positions of power, right? He's a general or an assistant to a general, and she's a senator. Um, and so they naturally come across questions of authority and order in societies. And she has a much more open view, if you can say that. He's more of a dictator, but he doesn't realize it. He just
Yeah.
has these expectations of how life should thrive. And it always comes from good intentions originally, but she then makes him aware of the consequences of his ideals about
Yeah.
life and society. And she says, what if people don't want to follow the rules, whether they come from you or anyone else? And he says, well, they should be made to.
Yeah.
And they didn't come to any conclusion. But I guess that was a warning that she didn't notice enough
Yeah.
because they stay together. And then as we know that it was driven by fear,
Yep.
and he was afraid of death, for example. And yeah,
Yep.
he
Losing
felt
people.
he felt a strong need for control because things were happening that he didn't he wasn't prepared to allow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's again, he took on responsibilities that actually he were unhealthy. He felt that he was responsible for to like change people and to again force them, well, the force, to be different, to meet his expectations. Because again, that's what it is. It's our own expectations of people, and if we remove those expectations, um, we stop judging, and again, we remove that responsibility. And I personally think that's healthy. Like I think again, we talk about because you be responsible for things that actually um again provide constructive stuff. So again, if you've got a child, responsible for your child, responsible for your own behavior towards that child, or to your own behavior towards people. So do you try and change them, or do you just show them love and kindness and listen and acceptance and listening for who they are? Like you talked about that stone with the sculpt, it's just still the statue inside is already there. So and it's up to everyone to just go through life in their own way. We don't understand. We don't have the power to know what is right or wrong from a people. So why are we so obsessed with it? Why are we so obsessed with trying to tell people what's right or wrong for them? And I think it's liberating. Oh my goodness, if we want to talk about the contrast going from when I was trying to be the perfect example and help everyone left, right, and center, which I still fall into the trap of, if I'm honest. But once I was free from feeling a responsibility for it, okay, now it's just my choice to do without any of the sort of the mental pressures, and I can choose to do it or not do it without feeling like I have to do it, I think is the key. Um, then yeah, it's liberating. Oh my goodness, like you feel free, you feel happy, you feel like weightless. Like it takes away that, and it feels a more loving, again, spiritual approach.
Let's take the example of your game group. You're in a position
Yes.
of some power.
Yep.
You are the founder, I think,
Hmm.
and a leader.
I guess co-founder technically. They don't come to the group anymore, but because they've moved to a different location. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah, organizer. Organizer of the group is a good term.
Um, and you try to create a peaceful environment where people can come and build friendships and have fun and so on.
Yep.
And so that's an ideal that you have, I'm assuming.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
and then it doesn't go that way.
Yep.
So what do you do? Are you authoritarian, or do you just allow things to fail?
This is a great discussion. Going all day about this kind of thing. I've learned along the way, like I very much by nature just let it all happen. Like I sit back, and if people in the past, if people fall out, I'll try and be a mediator.
Mm.
For example, I guess that's one thing. They're responsible for people if they fall out within the group. Um, and usually that ends up in them both hating me. Like I try to compromise for them both or appease what's going on, and usually that ends up in them both getting like turning their frustrations onto me, um, because I usually require them to like face what they're like their own take responsibility for
Mm.
their part of the fallout. If that's what's again, it all depends on the specific dynamic. If that's what's going on, and then so I guess I didn't try to preempt the falling out. So I was relaxed in that regard, like, okay, well, I don't need to do anything, just enjoy the games group, blah blah. There was no, again, policy in place or rules in place, no conduct um behavior document in place because I didn't think I needed one. Over the years, stuff has happened where, yeah, we now have the games group. We have a several page document to try and make sure people are aware of how, like, their responsibility within a group setting.
So is this something that you all
I know
agreed on how it's formulated, and did they all agree to live by the document?
they we're implementing more and more. So again, there's a long process here over sort of years. Um, but yes, I they have to agree verbally, or we're trying to get the people to sign things now,
Mm.
to that this is what's expected of them. Because
Yeah.
and also because the board games group could just be a board games group in the sense that it could just literally just be a board game. You come, you play. I don't deal with anything else, and then go. If people fall out, that's their responsibility. They go deal with it. That could be the way. I could choose to have it that way, and part of me kind of is always tempted in the past because actually that would be easier for me. But it's a community. Like we've had experiences before any falling outs where it was a family, it was a community. There was like everyone would just like get on, and it was more than just a board games group. We support each other, we make friendships. Um, and then I wanted to make sure that was still part of our ethos, I guess, where we are more than just a board games group. We are a community. We are inclusive. We support each other. Um, and there is a standard that's required, I guess, of behavior.
So now that it's in writing, you can refer to
Yes,
it, right? You can
it gives
say
it. Yes,
you could say your behavior is not in line with the document. Here it is. Here's proof.
yes.
There's nothing you can say because
That was a very
usually people defend their behavior.
yes. So that was a very important part of it. One of the main reasons for it, again, is to give me authority to be able to again ban people.
Mhm.
So um beforehand, I didn't like there was nothing in place. Like if I had to tell someone that they're not welcome back to the group because of behavior, there was nothing in place. They could just be like, well, you've not told me this before, or why should I listen to you? Um, I can just come and go as I please. These are my friends. I'm still going to come along. Blah blah. And it's like, well, actually, I need something in place for uh to safeguard other people if if these people are offensive, if they are um yeah, not nice people.
So let's imagine a situation where two guys, I think most of your people are guys.
What's great is that they're not. That's the great thing. Again, because I've tried to make it more of a beyond just a board gaming group. The diversity, more people feel welcome
Okay.
and not put off by the fact that it's again just a bunch of guys, because
Hmm.
that is needed. Again, Gloucester is a massive. Sorry, is a perfect like experiment for how different games groups can arise to
Mhm.
provide different things. And there is one that is mostly just dudes playing games, and that's it. They won't probably ever fall out. They probably won't ever communicate beyond their like their
Yeah.
emotional state. They just play board games. Whereas again, I have tried to provide something that is again diverse, is allows people to express more than just playing a game. Um, and yeah, that's what's fascinating is that yeah, usually you'd assume it was
Yeah.
just, but
Okay.
actually this group is yeah very much across the spectrum.
So two people, let's imagine two people arguing, getting louder, maybe looking like they might get in a fight. What happens? Does everyone else just get quiet and watch and then look to you and expect you to do something? Or do they move in and prevent them from hurting each other? What's the
Um,
dynamic?
luckily we've never had that, but yeah, that I would take my natural I guess my natural behavior would be just to to go up and be like, hey, look, calm it down, like, or just leave and calm it down, go your separate ways and come back another time, kind of thing, if that ever arose.
You said that someone hit you before, but that was a different type of situation, right?
That was out with, yeah, that was like that wasn't anyone in the group. That was somebody else coming in, like
Mm.
trying to assert themselves into the location to be violent with anyone. Didn't matter whether it was, they didn't know that we were a board game group or anything. They just came into the location and were looking
So
to be violent. So I just went up to him and just started pushing his buttons a little bit. And yeah, he hit me, and then we could phone the police. That's the short version of it. But that's
the purpose
what
of my
happens.
question was, if everyone is just a doormat waiting for some authority person to step in and keep the order or the law intact, then it's like the society we live in now, where
Yeah,
everyone just waits for authority to
yeah.
enforce the law. But
What is
I
nice?
I
Sorry, go on.
would prefer a society where everyone feels responsible for everyone else.
Yes,
And then they just say, no, it's not okay. And they don't wait for you to step in. They just
yes,
have a feeling for this is not helpful for what we're trying to build here. And
yeah,
then a law and an authority is less necessary.
yes. No, that's a beautiful way of putting it. So what I guess in this example of the games group is that like it's a lot of energy to I guess deal with interpersonal stuff. And over the years, there have been people that have come forward and been like, "Oh, can we help you? Like, what can we do to help you? Can we create a committee?" And most times when that happens, I'm like, yeah, obviously, yes, please, more people get involved. That's awesome. But what usually happens is after a few weeks, they realize how much energy it takes to deal with things behind the scenes with people or um, just organizing the event, etc. And usually they just realize no, that's too much responsibility for them. They're just there to
Mhm.
again to play games and relax, which again is fine. That's what it's there for. Ultimately, that is its purpose. Anything beyond that is their choice. But recently, and it's been amazing, is that 6 people have come forward a few months back, and we're all working together as a committee. I'm not organizer anymore, really. It's a committee, and it's like we're all the organizers, and it's all um, going so well. Like we've already had things where we're like differences of opinions and how we're going to do this, and we talk through it. Like again, in the past, people have just been like, oh, they've gone on huffs and then just stopped getting involved because they want to do it their way and they aren't necessarily willing to compromise. I tried to compromise, but I also have a lot of experience.
Mhm.
So having had the experience, I tried to be like, well, actually, this is what the reasons why I don't do it that way, etc., etc. And they'll just be like, well, no, you're doing it wrong. You're being a dictator. And then they'll just be stop things. But with this group, they have stuck with me when I've said, no, actually, let's do it this way. Then I've also tried, obviously, my best to be like, oh, actually, you know what? Yes, that is brilliant. Thank you. I didn't see that because that happens a lot. Like, I don't see things that they see, and they help me to be better as an organizer, as a member, as an attendee of this community. And yeah, it's been fantastic. The responsibility isn't all on me. It's again, as you say,
Mhm.
like it's part of now the community to take responsibility of things. And that's always tough again when it's not like you think of the difference between a job and a voluntary thing. So this is all voluntary. This is all
Mhm.
people's time, energy out with um, that authority structure. So it is more anarchy. It is more freedom to just make choices here and there. But it's also harder to get people to get the wrong word, but harder to encourage people to do things, or it can be harder
Yeah.
because I can't just be like, there's no fear of being fired
Yeah.
or whatever. Not that I'd want to do that because that's horrible, but like
No, that's a good point. That's a nice aspect of voluntary work.
yes,
Your survival doesn't depend on it. I've noticed that we've moved from personal, individual
yeah,
responsibility to this group thing,
group, yeah,
uh, or, or or sometimes we're talking about societies, and that's really interesting. They are connected. So obviously, when a group comes together and they work in harmony, and there is a structure that people um, aren't don't feel good about. It's not like, oh, I hate them and I need to be bad. I need to control the ones under me. Um, there is a harmony about it, and you almost don't need a structure Sure, you can call it committee, you can call it leader or something. But a connection I see between the two is who are the people that you can work with best when you're building a committee and when you're delegating tasks and taking collective responsibility? It's the people who take personal responsibility, right? Who have done some work on themselves and are serious
Yes.
about trying to improve togetherness.
Yes. Yeah. Again, there's a thing that I call, I guess, victim mentality, and that's when you're very internal and you're very, well, internal, but then inside you're blaming on everyone else. So that you're being like you're everyone else. It's something else has caused you to, um, it affects you rather than you taking charge of your own way of doing things. And most people that I can work with better are people that are willing to be like, okay, I take responsibility for my actions, and they don't again blame other things.
Yeah,
Um, like, oh, it's someone else in the committee's fault, it's someone else in the group's fault, or whatever. It's actually they go, okay, well, what can I do to um figure this out, or how can we help each other figure this out? I guess
yeah,
a willingness to listen. Like listening again, I'm not always that good at listening, but yeah, willingness to listen in the first place um is so vital.
yeah.
Um,
Communication
yeah.
needs to be there. For example, I sometimes give someone a task and never hear back from them, and then I
Yeah.
wonder, did did they decide that rather than reporting that they didn't do it, they prefer not having any contact with me anymore?
Yeah.
Because
And people
it's
can just forget. Like, that's how crazy it is that we're
yeah,
also bombarded with responsibilities within again having to provide with things like work and family and just life in general, that things slip through the cracks. And you can email that person and be like, "Oh, did you do this?" And like, "Oh no, totally forgot." Blah blah. Or that might be a cover up, as you say, for like they would rather not say they forgot, or
yeah.
um
So shame or something like that.
yeah.
When we take responsibility for someone else, not as in they have to do everything we expect them to, but just we like if I'm in a committee
Yeah.
and my actions will make a big difference whether this game group works well or not for everyone, then does that require me to know the person, to have some kind of loving connection with that person already? I think so.
Yeah, I think there has to be some level of that to start off with at least. Like, yeah, I think only, in my opinion, again, who knows the actual facts, science, but in my opinion, the gentleness and kindness has to always be I guess the last thing that you then communicate. It'd be nice if it was always the first thing and the whole time, but we're all gonna have different opinions. Like within the committee, we're gonna have things where we have different opinions, and then our natural responses might be to get defensive and be like blah blah. But then, as long as we then, again, as a committee, help each other to work through that, and at the end of it, fall back on the fact that we're friends, like that we care for each other, that um, we want what's best for the group. We like the motivation behind what's happening is actually because we're trying to do our best to support the other people and each other. We just have different ways of doing it, maybe, and have to go, oh, well, actually, it doesn't matter. One way, either way is fine. Let's
Mhm.
just do it that way. And
Just
then
decide.
be like, hey, you know what? Love you guys. Like, this is cool. Like, this is good that we can do this together and actually thrive off of that and realize that it's okay to do that way, rather than being like, well, you're just causing an issue within the group by not listening to my opinion, and I'm the organizer, therefore you can go away and just do what you want. Like that's obviously a common response,
Yeah.
um, but it's something that I hope I never do. I mean, I may have done in the past. I may still do without realizing. I hope people will call me up on that if that ever happens. Um, but I like to think that um, I've moved past that sort of level of behavior. And if I do it, I hope that soon I'll be like within time, I'd be like, oh, sorry, didn't realize I was doing that. I'm so sorry. Like, blah, blah.
Yeah, you need to stay humble and
Yeah,
adaptable, right?
yeah,
In my opinion, anything that is built on an idea or a law is destined to fail and destroy itself. And I haven't worked this out, but
What do you mean by idea?
like ideal is maybe
Oh,
a better
ideal.
word for
Sorry.
it.
Okay. Sorry.
No,
Yes.
I
Okay.
did say idea because
Yeah.
I think essentially that is even enough for things
Okay.
to not work. Um, but I know this is going off a tangent.
That's fine.
Um, but it's so man-made, it's so fickle, and
Yes.
it's just a matter of time before it will crumble. And so the question is, how can things work then if everything that people come up with is destined to crumble and fail? I believe there is some non-human energy, let's call it, um, that you can tap into. And if everyone does, they're tapping into the same one thing. Some people might call it the universe. Um, and that thing, it's not like everyone will end up being the same, like a robot or a
Yeah.
communist or something, but that this universal thing will provide everyone with the motivation and the direction that they need
Yeah.
for everyone to be able to live in harmony.
Yeah.
And so that if everyone just let go of their own ideals and
Yeah.
connected with this one universal thing, then it would work out. And obviously, that could never be man made or man controlled.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my theory on order, but never man made. It's a natural order, you might say.
Yeah. I always think of it as like unity through diversity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a unified source, like you say, the universe, um, whatever phrases you want to use. Um, but diversity, again, accepting that the source is going to use us in different ways.
The source is another name for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
That's so interesting. And that's something I'm trying to uncover right now for myself.
yeah. Well, again, it's realizing that we all we have so much more in common than we that we have that's not in common. Again, it's a
Yeah.
cliche phrase, but it's so true. But we're constantly focusing on what's different. That's what is one of the blockers, in my opinion. We're
Yeah.
always focusing on what's different. We're always like, oh, you're this way and I'm that way, and it's like, well, cool, that's good. Rather than it being like a thing that we should highlight, we're all human beings. That's, in my opinion, like I'm a massive person that like believer in the power of humanity. And if we focus on the fact that we're human, that thing that connects us and that we experience maybe in different ways, but the same emotions, the fear, the pain, the love, the joy, those are the commonalities, the things that we, whether the spectrums may be different, but again, that's what we feel. Um, and I think that when we focus on those, we connect. The emotional connection that takes place is spiritual to me. Um, it rises above what we see as our reality, as mortality, as the flesh, however you want to phrase it.
Mhm.
Because then, yeah, our our goal, our purpose, our place in existence becomes unified because we just go, human, cool, that's it.
Yeah. So to put this in terms of responsibility, I, whenever I feel the responsibility for something being a certain way, then that is because I have an ideal about what things should be like. And like I said, in my opinion, that's generally destructive and negative.
Yeah, dangerous.
And but does that then mean that I shouldn't take responsibility for anything? No, I'm responsible for not having any ideals and for connecting with the energy that is wiser than any one of
Yeah,
us. That is pretty much the only responsibility I have then. And it doesn't make me a drone or a slave. It I'm still trying to discover this for myself, but I hear that giving up your individual ideals about yourself and the world, um, and taking on the one from the universe
Yeah.
gives you more freedom than you could ever have without it.
Yeah, I
It,
have a
it sounds
phrase.
paradoxic, but it.
Well, okay, that's amazing you used the term paradoxical there, because I literally, going back 10 seconds, was like one of the most important things we had to do as well, like it's in my brain, is accept paradox.
Mhm.
Because by talking about an ideal and not having ideals, that's a contradiction or a paradox, because actually the harmonious way of doing things is an ideal.
That's true.
Like,
Yeah,
so we have to come to terms and accept that there are going to be, again, things that contradict and things that are paradoxical. Once we start doing that, um, yeah, it feels free. Like you talk about, it feels more free. You feel more um able to just again be ourselves. Again, podcast is who am I? Like we feel more actually who we were meant to be or who we want to be. Because again, it's ultimately a choice. Ultimately, like taking again responsibility for how we behave, how we conduct ourselves. Is sometimes the only thing we can do. It's actually the only actual choices we have. How we respond to pain, how we respond to challenges, how we respond to loss. Ultimately, it all comes down to us. And I've always hated that in the past because I was always like, oh, it's so cliche. It takes away how difficult these things are because it belittles. To me, it always felt like it belittled how challenging it actually is.
just do this
But
one thing.
just do that and you'll be fine. It's like no, that is like this stuff takes years and decades to
Yeah,
work through. It takes a whole lifetime, grief and loss of loved ones and situations like that are just so traumatic. There's so much again pain out there to just go, oh, just take responsibility, stop being the victim. It's demeaning and it's in my opinion again it's not the source, as it were. It's not understanding and loving. Because again, we're all at our own paces, we're all doing our things in our own way. And so therefore, go back to the point, is that it's up to us to take responsibility of how we respond to people that take longer than maybe we do, or again, to process things or um whatever the specific situation actually is. And again, as I say, in the past, I didn't like that because of those reasons, and I still struggle with it. But actually, to me, it's true. We do have to be the ones that take responsibility, and we have to learn again over years. We have to be patient with each other and ourselves because if we're constantly expecting people to get to these points, then yeah, it becomes toxic. It becomes destructive. That's not our responsibility. Again, talk about responsibility. Our responsibility is just finding that harmony in ourselves. So important.